Welcome to a podcast on marketing. I'm your host, Jordan Ogren, and this is a podcast where we talk about marketing. First question, who are you and what do you do?
Thank you so much. My name is Sara Pion, Pion. Some people get it wrong, but that's okay. That's such is life.
What is something you've been or you currently are obsessed with, whether it's in marketing, business, or just in life?
I am a currently. I think it's because of like the pandemic and taking this sort of away from the marketing world. But I'm obsessed with offline activations and like in person, sort of guerrilla marketing-y kind of tactics. I think that they're just so amazing for like awareness, but also like brand affinity. For like if someone's a brand that you really enjoy does something in person that you really like. So there's a dating app in the UK specifically called Thursday, and they do all their in-person activations on Thursdays. So they run really cool like subway and bus ads that say it's not embarrassing to say that you met your significant other on Thursday. It is embarrassing to say that you met on Tinder, Hinge, Bumble, whatever. And then they also just do like they have a plate of dates in the center of London, and like it says fancy a date. Download our app to X, Y, and Z. And I just think it pushes boundaries a lot, and it makes people like be able to tangibly feel your brand in a way that like affects kind of the whole funnel, but really just top notch for awareness. I think is better than a billboard, I would say.
That's interesting. Yeah, it definitely would be like a shock value. I mean, some of them, it seems that could also, like, you'll just remember them longer than whether it's a commercial or some other normal form of marketing. So that's pretty cool that you are interested in that. And the Thursday, I'll definitely have to look into that. I never heard of that, and that interests me as I was obsessed with looking and kind of like analyzing marketing. So another question I enjoy to start off with, it's a super simple one, and I usually get many different answers though, is what is marketing for? Like, how do you define marketing? What is the job it should get done?
Yeah, I think in its core it's education, just like full stop. I think before it was like attention, but for now it's kind of because almost every market has been commoditized, especially in software where I have spent my entire career. I mean, even in consumer products, everything is commodity. Marketing is about like trying to teach your market and your target customer and like your internal team a little bit like why the product matters, because if you build it they will come worked in like the 2000s. It doesn't really work in like the 2020s at this point, because everyone is so skeptical. So like education and like not forcing anything upon someone else, but really being like, and that kind of integrates like all of marketing. So like strategic narrative is like, why does the world that you live in no longer exist? And what is this new world model? And how does our product help you bridge that gap between old world and new world? And then you have like middle of the funnel activations where you have like super specific educational content, webinars, social, whatever. And then you have the bottom of the funnel where it's just like, basically the test, like, and passing is buying and failing is not. And that's what I think like some marketers forget, is we get so focused on attribution and trying to measure everything that we forget that like we're really just supposed to be here to be a teacher.
That's a really good in kind of first time I've heard that definition. Attention is, the one you hear a lot, and I always kind of challenge that. Is it really about attention, or is it more about maybe resonance, kind of going deeper, that reach versus resonance? I think inherent in education is resonance, that for someone to learn and for the transfer of knowledge or help to be even kind of created, there has to be, I trust you, I'm opting in, rather than this old way of kind of forcing people, finding emails and just sending them stuff. So I like that a lot. And even just the strategic narrative, Andy Raskin, all that stuff that you brought in, I feel is super kind of correlated to this new way. I don't want to say new way of marketing even, but it's just a kind of new look on it. That's a good definition. Now, using that definition, I'm guessing kind of the answer to this question, but how do you kind of define good and bad marketing? marketing. Obvious rebuttal is like it's totally in the eyes of the perceiver, but I think it's kind of fun to discuss like how do you think through that? If you see another marketing like Thursdays, you obviously think that's good marketing.
Yeah.
Why do you say certain things are good marketing, and maybe you don't say it, but why do you feel that certain ones are bad?
I think there's like flashy marketing, effective marketing, and then like bad marketing. And I think flashy marketing can be mostly associated in my mind with bad marketing unless you're like so 100% clear on who you're educating. So there's a brand that makes a lot of noise, but they put on this like really big like activation that didn't make any sense to me. I was like, how does that? And people were talking about it, and they were like, "Wow, this is crazy." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's crazy, but like, is that going to give them anything? Like, is that going to do anything?" This wasn't a Super Bowl commercial. I'm not talking about Coinbase. But yeah, so for me, like, it's the difference between good marketing and bad marketing is like fundamentally knowing who your students are versus just trying to like yell into the void. And I think things that fall into the yell into the void is like trying to automate everything, like trying to do something that no one else is doing, even though no one's paying attention, and like trying to reinvent the wheel. And trying to be innovative for the sake of being innovative, when really good marketing is just doing like a few simple things really well. And those are like the fundamentals of marketing, and they haven't changed. And it's the people who are doing good marketing just have consistency in doing those good things well. Thursday knows who their target buyer is. They're not all of a sudden trying to, you know, be a different kind of app. They are a dating app for people who are looking to be able to say that they met someone more organically than someone who doesn't care that they met someone on another dating app, for example. So yeah, like I think that's where marketers can get caught up a little bit. And I spent the first 4 or 5 years of my marketing career marketing to marketers. So it always felt like we had to operate at a level above our target audience because they knew our tricks. But really what we had to do was like be consistent and do the things that didn't scale because they made an impact. And then everyone would be like, how did you do that? And we'd be like, simply, we just did it. Like it didn't require automation. It didn't require extra tooling. It just required us to actually invest time in doing that thing because we care.
That's good. That's good. So some of the themes that I just want to pull out there, kind of like be human, automation, robotic, be human, be kind of simple. Don't kind of do this flashy. Don't kind of go try to be so complex. Yeah, no, I like that. And then just rooting it and really knowing the students, which you can obviously take that to like your customers, your prospects, like really understanding who even cares and then trying to kind of talk to them, talk with them, maybe is actually a better way to put it. I like that. What is a strong held belief you currently have about marketing? A hill you're kind of willing to die on in regards to marketing?
Most marketers are lazy. uh, Having supported that, like my first job in tech was like support for a MarTech tool. And then I administrated that MarTech tool and was on the marketing team and then just like delved deeper into the life of being a marketer. And I think inherently because leadership sometimes doesn't know the value of marketing, we can try and essentially be a second sales team, and we try and just do the activities that can be attributed directly to revenue, which is lazy because those are automated channels or paid channels, and then you just waste a lot of money and time and effort automating something that doesn't really drive business impact. And I don't think it's laziness because marketers want to, but I think it's kind of like by force a little bit from leadership who doesn't get it.
Yeah, that's interesting. You use the word lazy. I think, it made sense after you kind of went through your definition or your way of explaining it, because I was like, wait a second, lazy. Let's hear this out here. But I do agree, and I wonder too, obviously you said one way, they're forced to. They don't have maybe the overhead leadership that allows them to be creative, to consistently show up in unique ways, whatever that is. But I do wonder too if there's like inherent beliefs that we believe. Maybe we don't actually say we believe them, but we just think like, hey, marketing can't do kind of I know there's many kind of beliefs that I've had and I've heard others say that would kind of make you be quote unquote lazy without really realizing like, hey, I can do more. It's kind of like a limiting belief that marketers myself included, have had of like, I can't impact X or I can't really do Y, so I'm just gonna like do the basic task day in and day out
Yeah.
and get lazy
Maybe
in
it's
that
not
sense.
lazy, it's just that marketers have a lot of limiting beliefs, both like inside themselves and externally projected onto them. Uh, and the good
True.
ones really know how to fight.
Yeah, so let's dive into that. I think that's an interesting topic. What are some limiting beliefs you had maybe, and now that you've, either conquered them or you like imposter syndrome, right? We have to conquer it daily. What are some like of those limiting beliefs for yourself?
Yeah, so starting my career in marketing for like with like internships before I even was on payroll, essentially like salaried, was I thought that marketing was blogs, swag, and events. And you kind of just did those because you were the fun team and it didn't actually drive any like business value. Like I was a business major. In marketing, we were taught the four P's in advertising. We weren't taught that like marketing drives revenue, like marketing should impact dollars. And so that was kind of a wake up call when I entered my first marketing role. I was working under Dave Gerhardt at Drift, and I was taught essentially in my first full time marketing role the antithesis of traditional marketing. So that was really cool because my baseline was just like, this is the playbook, not the old way. The old way being automate everything, lead forms, don't talk to your customers, have your email always be no reply at because you don't actually want to talk to your customers at all. But I think in that sort of sense, my what evolved then into limiting beliefs was I was on a team of like very creative people, but very non-technical people. So I was like, okay, like marketing is just brand, content, and like social. There isn't really like a technical aspect of marketing. And then I was moved on to a growth team under a man who calls himself a mad scientist and was then taught that you can be a marketer who understands technical workflows and who's also creative. Then from there, it's just like, how do you scale that as a career? So every new thing that I learned about marketing, there was like a new limiting belief of like, oh, marketers can't do that. Oh, marketers can't do that. But
Sure.
really, I think especially right now when kind of all eyes are on marketers right now, because we've done a really good job of talking about being us, maybe to a fault. There is a little bit more of like a wide open space to like make your career in marketing what you want it to be. And then that comes with limiting beliefs is like, am I qualified to do this? No one else has done it before. Does it matter? Like, am I driving business impact? I can't measure it. How do I measure this thing? But it kind of evolves like as you learn more about your niche as a marketer.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that with us, with me, because I also feel the same through school. Just kind of learning, not really learning that, like you said, that marketing should be whether actually tied to pipeline or it should be having a direct, which then obviously revenue, right? That it needs to be. It's not just a cheerleading function, to say, hey, we're over here, making us look and kind of sound cool, but we're actually driving real results. And luckily for you, you got an environment where you had someone who already learned that or kind of was preaching that. Do you find that in marketing it requires a lot of relearning, kind of forgetting the past, or not forgetting, but saying, okay, that's not it. Like blogs, it's not that's there's more to it. How do you go about that relearning process, or is it just kind of subconsciously and you don't even really think much about relearning and letting go of the old beliefs?
I think I have like a slight advantage because I wasn't taught the old beliefs. I specifically left Drift, my first like marketing role, to go to a very like traditional marketing company, so I could learn like, okay, like what is the deal with trade shows? Like, why are they so important, and why should we have lead forms, and why should we take a more professional tone versus a conversational tone? And that just like also helped me with like foundational knowledge. And then I realized that it didn't work out very well.
So through experience,
Yeah, but I think also like the basics of marketing have been documented. Like to name all the people that always are named, but like Robert Cialdini and the Principles of Influence, and like Ogilvy on advertising, and just like the psychology of humans, like and the 22 immutable laws of marketing, like they are immutable. But because trend jacking has become such a big thing of just like, oh, the kids are doing this, like that's what we should do, like we should be on TikTok. No, it's not actually about like adapting to every new trend that comes out, but instead like really focusing on those like core marketing laws that will work because of like natural human psychology and how we operate, and then being able to like modernize that, obviously, because we can't do exactly the same thing as Ogilvy or Cialdini because those books were written in the 90s, 80s, whatever. Maybe before then. I did not check the publication date. I'm so sorry. But instead, like applying those like real and true principles to like the market and the world as it is today. And so that's not always like doing the flashiest thing and like do it like making sure that you are always up with the trends, because then you're trendy but you're not classic. And that's like my fashion reference for the day.
Yeah, because everybody wants to be a classic,
Yeah.
That's classic. That song's a classic, that film's a classic,
Yeah.
It's better than, that one was a good Netflix clip for a bit. But no, I really enjoy what you're saying, and I totally agree with that. I read this book, The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. I can't even say his name, but it pretty much, it's not at all about marketing, but he talks a lot about this thing called like optimistic contrarian thinking. And it's just going from the roots. So you're always just going from the principles, from the basics, and you're building your thought process up rather than, starting at this high level and kind of just grabbing trends and grabbing whatever. You have the foundation, you've read those books you've listed. Because really, to be honest, I read a book every like week and a half. So like I'm always reading books. And I'll be completely honest, I've read the books you mentioned, and a lot of these new age books, like they're cool and all. They sound great, but like they're just trash. Like I'll be completely honest, like you don't need to read. There's probably a set list, like 10, 15 books you need to read. You need to grasp them, some in like copywriting, writing, some in marketing, some in just life in general. And then like you just get the basics, and then you can build up from those, which I think is really what good marketing is. It's good decision making, it's good thinking, and without basics it's really hard to do that because you're just grabbing onto, hey, this company did this or this, and you're not understanding, well, what's the roots of why it worked for them. So that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought into the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, like even going back to that, like the new age books, that's kind of something that like leaders who don't get it kind of grasp onto, and they're like, look, this is this new marketing trend, marketers go do it. And that kind of ties into the marketers not necessarily being lazy on purpose, but like lazy because of, or just like having to prove their value via what a leadership team wants them to do.
Yeah, no, that's true. To be a good marketer, you have to be, quote unquote, a strong cookie. You have to be very strong in your beliefs, what you think is going to work. I try, like, there's like, you got to have balls. Like, I try to make it somewhat not male. So, like, strong cookie, I feel, is quite a general neutral kind of thing. But it's true. You have to defend.
Take the punches.
Yeah, and give some too. No, just kidding. Well, unless
too.
you like that. So what is something in marketing that and we might have talked about a few of them, but like something you disagree? A lot of marketers say X and you're just like, no, that's not true. That isn't the way. Like, does anything come to mind that you just routinely disagree with marketers, people on in general around business marketing?
This is more like, this might be around marketing. Maybe. I don't know. Let me know if I'm wrong. But I've seen a lot, like from my own experience, maybe, but like from talking to other people also. Like I talk to a lot of people about like professional and career development, career growth, and like how to grow in marketing. And one thing that's just like sucks is a marketing leader coming onto a team, inheriting a team, and coming in with a playbook because it worked before. And that shit sucks. Am I allowed to swear? That stuff sucks.
Yeah, definitely let it loose.
I think especially because marketing is so specific to a company, coming in with like a playbook of like, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and then it'll result in this, which will lead to this, is wrong. And also doesn't like take into account the talents of the people on the team that you're inheriting. And it really, it can take a great company and make it mediocre really quickly. And that sucks. And I think because like there is, going back to that thing of like leadership needs to see ROI of marketing activities immediately, hiring a leader that's like, here is my playbook and here's how it's worked at the last 4 companies that I've been at is like a really safe bet, but a really like kind of vibe killer. Not only like internally, but like the market's gonna feel it too, because what once was innovative and exciting because these people were doing the things that they wanted to do that drove business impact aren't going to be doing that anymore, and they're going to be following a script, and that sucks.
Yeah, to me, just a word that came to mind was ignorant. I feel that that's quite ignorant just to like come in with your playbook. Yeah, no, I've heard like on some like the CMO podcast or something that obviously interviews people who have been CMOs in other companies. Like a routine thing I hear is like you just come in, you listen for the first 60 days, you just observe for the first X amount of days, and you really try to understand your team skill, which you're talking about is like with the playbook, you kind of just don't care about what my team skill is because it may not kind of back that playbook if it's like video YouTube, like we don't might not have a strong video team or whatever. So I think that's something that like I think marketers like you have to be a very observant and almost ditch everything if you go to a new company and try to build like we are talking about, build from the ground up of like, okay, what's this business strategy, who are they targeting, all those things, rather than, hey, we had this successful at even my last two companies, we're just going to do it as kind of ignorant and not the best strategy. It's a good thing to disagree with people on. What is one of your biggest failures, a mistake you made that obviously now you're not like thankful for it, but you're like, okay, that helped me get to where I am now?
Yeah, I'm a relatively risk averse person, so like failure is just like, whew, hate that. Hate that stuff. Like tactically, a failure that I did was like I accidentally sent an email to far too many people and like ruined our IP reputation, and it was just like a bummer and a half, which is like very tactical marketing. I feel like also some sort of like bridge that you have to cross to be like a marketer is you have to like accidentally send far too many emails, or like at Drift, for example, it was like you had to turn on a bot with no targeting, so it fired to like 100,000 people in the span of like 30 seconds, and then you just had like messages flooding the inbox and you were like, shit, what did I do? But I think from a career perspective, I love being busy, and sometimes I can mistake being busy for like making an impact, because it's easier to just like put your head down and execute than like and fully question why you're doing something and how that impacts a business. And for me to feel like I have like put a stake in the ground and been like, Sarah has been here, I have like a set of kind of like criteria to be like, I made an impact, I've done it, like I can stay here, but I would also be okay leaving. And just executing for the sake of executing was something that I did, and something that I can fall back into really, really easily. And as I grow in my career and I want to be more strategic, falling into execution mode is detrimental for me, because I'm viewed as an executor then, not a strategist. And so I think that hasn't happened, once. It's happened multiple times. It's like my default, which is not great, and I'm trying to unlearn it. But I think that's like held me back the most. And like I could be, I could be like I could have a certain title, or I could, be held to a different standard if I came into an organization and didn't immediately want to make like a tactical, like tangible impact on one specific thing, and instead kind of do the CMO thing of listen, observe, where is the gap? What does the business like fundamentally need right now? And how can I put a plan in motion or be involved in the solving of that problem? I think that's like leader versus IC behavior. And so far I've entered with IC behavior. All the companies have just been like, I have to prove myself quickly, and like, what is the lowest hanging fruit that I can bang out with like little to no context and just be like, look, I did something. Like, can you see? Do you like it? Did I do a good job? Versus, being an adult.
Yeah. I mean, I totally get that, because that's what got you maybe to where you're at, or continually
Yeah.
got you there, was the hard work, was kind of just going, getting everything done, or doing just so much rather than really kind of slowing down to go fast of like, what should I be? What's the one
Yeah.
thing, Gary Keller in the sense? So like, what do you do now? Because you said you go back into it, sometimes, or you have a tendency to possibly go back to that executioner mode. Like, what things do you put in place? How do you make sure you stay in this strategizing or strategy mode rather than slip back into the execution?
I think one thing that was like super important to me was like I needed to have like a deliverable essentially, and that stems from Drift. uh, their whole culture was like you ship on your first day, no matter what your position is. Like you have something to produce on your first day, and I was like, I need to have something to produce on my first day, forever. But instead now, like if I am, crafting a strategy, brainstorming, like trying to figure out like the next best move, I need to document it because that makes me feel like I have a deliverable to show someone. And it also helps like organize my thoughts. At VoiceFlow, we use FigJam, which is great, 10 out of 10. But like at my last company, we did a lot of like slides and like Google Docs, or like wiki pages, So that's kind of helped me be like, I have something to show you that I worked on. Like whether that's, a blog post or like the content strategy, totally different things, but there is a deliverable. So that's what I need for myself to feel like I did it. I've executed strategically.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. It's kind of changing the mindset around what is a deliverable or what could be a deliverable in this new kind of mode of working. I think that's really a smart kind of way of like, hey, this is who I am. That's going to be hard to change. So like, how about let's just get the strategy thinking or the strategy stuff on paper in FigJam in whatever that kind of way is. So then I actually can continually show or kind of ship every day or every frequently per se. That's good. That's good. So in your so at your Drift, so on your LinkedIn, I'm a total stalker, and you talk a lot about how like you talk to customers daily. Why is speaking to your customers daily frequently important as a marketer?
Yeah, I mean, I see this. It was super impactful at Drift. It was super impactful at Alice. It's super impactful at VoiceFlow. And even like Drift and Alice were marketing technology tools. I was a marketer, so I understood like how I would use X, Y, and Z thing in my own circumstance. But every marketing team, every business is solving a different problem, and the way that they use technology in general is going to be inherently different. So it's great for honestly like your own ideas. If you work in marketing technology and you talk to your customers who are your peers essentially, you could be like, oh, it's a really good idea, like we should do that the next time. And then on like the voice flow perspective, it helps with like, I'm going back to the teaching analogy because I love good analogy. It goes back to like the lesson planning of like, okay, like what does this person know, but like what hasn't like registered yet? Like what could we show them that's going to be a huge aha moment that makes them even stickier? And it's easy, or it's hard to get that context by listening to gong calls or watching sessions on LogRocket, like physically watching people interact with your tool. It's like so painful, but but it's really helpful because you are forced into the shoes of your customer to contextualize their journey, because there's no idea, like there's no standard customer journey. Marketing attribution is fake. Amanda Nielsen has a great like swag store that's like, marketing attribution is literally fake, like we just made it up, because it's going to be like one like ad that they saw 3 weeks ago, and then they talked to a friend, and then they remembered like 4 weeks, like 2 weeks later, and then they signed up. Like you can't replicate that. But instead understanding like the fundamental problems of your customers and how different they are, but also kind of the same, and how your product solves that, helps your marketing register, because then you're talking about like a real life thing instead of like the scenario you made up in your head that you thought would be impactful for your customers.
That's good. That's good. And just on your last part, the whole part of talking to customers, great. The last part about the attribution, yeah, totally agree. I feel like many times marketers like just forget how we buy things. Like we just forget that like I bought a book from a guy a long time ago. I was just on Amazon today scrolling, his like second book popped up, and I've looked at it, but like I just bought it, and it's like there's nothing to attribute to that other than like I bought his book a while ago, I enjoyed it, whatever. So yeah, I think sometimes we literally forget how we purchase things or how we kind of go through the decision making process when we start to get into marketer mode. And I think to your point, maybe talking to customers allows you to slow that down, and you actually talk to someone of like, okay, and now you're talking probably like around using the product, but there's also obviously, why did you choose our product? Like what was the issues, problems, and you can start to figure out, or especially people who didn't, if you can talk to people who didn't buy your product, like what was the in the way, rather than like you said, you just have in your head these things of like, oh, we're just, the price is a reason, where like it may not even be close to that. So for me, it brings you closer to the truth, which I think is always my objective in life, outside of marketing, is get close to the truth. I don't care what feels good or what I think. Let's get closer to truth. So you spent around like 2 3 years, close to 3 years working at Drift. What were some of those top lessons? You kind of said, I don't know if it's a top lesson, but ship daily. Like, what were some of those lessons that you took away that you still use today from Drift?
Yeah, I think Drift did a really good job of like defining their like principles. They called them leadership principles, and I think it's because the co-founders were like five-time co-founders. Like they had done this before, and they were gonna do it right. And so far, I haven't found a company that has like such specific operating principles, or they at least haven't like literally put them onto cards and given them to their employees, because that's what happened at Drift. Like we had the
Wow.
leadership principle deck, and it was like sat on our desk. But yeah, like I think ship every day, do things that don't scale. I think especially because I do have a bit of a background in growth marketing, which is like, how can we scale everything? That mindset is actually it helps drive more ideas, because instead of how can we scale this, it's like, what if we tried this and figured out how to scale it later? I love that mentality, because it's kind of going back to the person who ran growth at the time, who called himself a mad scientist. He was like, don't think about logistics. What do you want to do? And that just like breeds so much creativity, because you're like, well, what if we did this? And then we're like, all right, let's try and figure out how we actually can do that. So I do try and bring that to a lot of other places, to all the places that I've worked at since. And then I think like being scrappy is like not something that was like instilled at Drift, but I think it's something that I am masochistically obsessed with from a startup perspective. Like I love startups. It's not like, doesn't make any sense, because they're a disaster all the time. The sparkliest startups on the outside are literally a dumpster fire on the inside, and that's why they're glowing. Like it's not because they're actually like spit shined. But I think it's really fun to take a lot of separate parts and create a structure, instead of coming in with a structure and trying to optimize it. And so for me, like being scrappy, understanding my resources, but also knowing that a lot of the people around me, when they do join a startup, also feel the same way, allows a team of like 40 to operate like a team of 80, because we're all so passionate about the work that we're doing, that we're able to kind of make the best use of our time and then do a little bit more for a short period of time. If you keep doing that, you're going to burn out your employees.
Yeah, definitely. No, I like that. I think startups. So yeah, the company I work for just recently started like a SaaS product. So I'm kind of experiencing the dumpster fires in that sense of just like, it's just crazy. It's like cocaine, you enjoy it for a bit, but like it's not a long-term sustainable lifestyle just to, wake up and do it every day. No, I'm just kidding. But no, that's good. I like those takeaways. So quickly, I want to ask you, you have a podcast called Self-Control and Cheese. It's very interesting. What was the impetus? What was the origin for that? Like, why start a podcast?
Yeah, I virtually met my co-host. We had never actually been in the same room together until this past summer, which was crazy.
Wow.
But we both kind of grew with high growth companies. So we entered in the ground floor of Drift for myself and G2 for my co-host Bridget Pucker. And we're both like super motivated to do well at our jobs. It's hard to work at startups if you don't really want to grow. And like so much respect for people who want to show up at a job every day and then like stop doing their job. I'm getting to that point because I moved to Denver and everyone here has a hobby. And I'm like, I gotta have more time doing my hobbies. But I digress. We agreed with it. We like got connected because Drift and G2 were like company friends. There's a lot of overlap in terms of like co-marketing opportunities and all that fun. So like that's kind of just like how we knew each other. And then we started to have conversations of like, dude, like nobody's talking about what it's like to be a 20-something trying to grow your career. So many of the like career growth podcasts are people talking to CEOs and executives and people who haven't been there in a long time. So it's kind of like rainbows and butterflies and like, yeah, it was hard, but like it was worth it. But there weren't a lot of people who were like, this is hard and I'm not having a good time right now. And like nobody told me that I should look out for this thing. And so we figured that we should just start talking about that. And it's like kind of niche. It's like tech marketing, high growth tech marketing, but it kind of can apply to any sort of growth, career growth path at any sort of company. Maybe not engineers, because I fundamentally do not understand what it takes to grow as an engineer,
Sure.
In terms of like knowing how to code. But I mean, we're doing a whole series right now on how to get hired in tech if you don't already work in tech, and like what is it like to get an interview versus what can you expect during the interview, and then how the heck do you read an offer from a startup? Like, what do you mean like fair market value stock? Like, what does that mean? Is that good? Do I want that? Like answering those kinds of questions that like we've had to figure out on the fly. So it's for like past us and whoever else is like dealing with it right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Something that I just think is super cool is that you create it with someone that you didn't even know personally, or you knew them, but like not in person. And I think that's something that I'm seeing a lot is, if you want to do something new, obviously I'm not an example of this, I'm doing a solo podcast, but like find someone to kind of do a side project or do a passion project with. A, it'll be more fun, and B, it's like you can learn from each other. So that's like something. And then another piece is that niche, like finding, hey, like, but also like for you, it was like, there's nothing I can listen to for this. So like, I think that's super key in marketing is like, or just in general, is create something that you wish you had. So like career advice for people. And like, that's a really kind of good takeaway just from your explanation of how you came to be on it. A final question before I jump into the final 3 questions is why should we stop comparing marketing to dating?
Oh my God, I hate it so much. I hate that. I literally was interviewed for like a newsletter on this too, and I just think it's so creepy. Like, stop. It's one of those things where people are trying to equate an entire like profession to something that is very simplistic, and in that sense, I agree. Everyone like interacts with marketing on a regular basis, and they should be able to like know that they're being marketed to. But I don't think that the dating analogy is the best way to go about that, mostly because those analogies get misogynistic almost immediately in very, very uncomfortable ways, where it's just like you're saying more about your views right now than what marketing is actually all about. They're also like generally super broad and don't have a good understanding of marketing. And it's just like it's just icky. It gives me the ick. If we're marketers and we're creative, we should come up with a better way to explain what the heck we do and not have it be a weird, like misogynistic, kind of creepy, doesn't feel like safe for work kind of conversation about what we do.
Yeah, I second that, and we can definitely not go deeper into that. I saw you post about that, and you just like full stopped. You didn't like go into it, so I was like, what do you mean? Like, I agree with you, sure, but like I want some elaboration. So I'm glad you could elaborate on that. And please, for everybody that's listening, the 2 to 3 people, don't use dating analogies for your marketing. Get more creative.
We can brainstorm something else together, but like, let's not. Let's not use dating.
Yes, let's leave that before COVID. Okay, so the final 3 questions. The first 2 will be on marketing. The last one will be kind of outside of it. The first question is what is one thing in the last 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 years you've changed your mind on? So I believe this, now I believe that in marketing business.
It's like kind of tangential, but I didn't peak in college. I think that's like a very US thing, is like to have like the time of your life in college. I didn't, which is like great because that would be super early in my life. But then I also was just like, college didn't teach me anything. College isn't important. You don't need a degree to work in marketing or to work in tech because my degree like doesn't matter. And having conversations, and I like don't necessarily think that I need to go into continuing education. Like there's going to be no reason for me to like get an MBA because I was a business major. So like what more can they teach me? But I think that there is value in education if not for like interpersonal and soft skills. I'm really good at thinking on the fly, talking on the fly, presenting on the fly because of my business degree. Sure, I don't do finance for my job, and that was really all that I was taught from like a tactical like business perspective is like accounting and finance, and like I can calculate the depreciation of a machine like you wouldn't believe, but that doesn't really come in handy for me right now. But I think it's like the working together with in like a group setting and being able to like communicate fully your thoughts, and that sort of skill that isn't taught in high school really is where the value of college can be for people who might not necessarily want to pursue what their degree is in. And so that's changed my mind of just like college is useless, don't go, just go into tech, like be a sales rep, whatever, like you can do whatever you want. If you do want to go to college, there is value in it. If you don't want to go to college, that's also cool. Like don't worry about it. No pressure.
Yeah, no, definitely. I can already hear all the LinkedIn bros getting quite upset of like college isn't needed, just spend the money on like a $2,000 course on SEO or something silly. No,
Literally, like
I'm with you. Yeah, I feel like for me, I don't know, I went to like some small schools, but yeah, I learned things
yeah,
that are now applicable now, even in a sense of like how to like I don't want to say cheat, but yeah, cheat enough to like pass, and not get caught. Like there's some lessons in that have,
scrappy.
yeah,
That's scrappiness.
exactly.
Resourceful, if you will.
Yes, definitely not unethical. But so the next question is, have you seen the movie Inception? It was like with Leonardo DiCaprio.
I didn't,
Okay, no, totally
but
fine.
like, I heard about it.
I'll give you the spark notes just so you can
Yeah.
answer this question. So pretty much they
Okay.
incept ideas into people's heads through like their dreams, and then they wake up the next day and like, this is my dream or my idea. I want to sell my company or I want to whatever. So the question
Okay.
is, if you could incept one idea into the minds of every marketer. So tomorrow they wake up and it's their own idea. They're like, yes, I believe this. It's my idea. What is that?
Engineering is your friend, not like strangers. Being able to communicate with product and engineering is such a superpower, and marketers are so far removed from their work when they could have like the deepest insight into the product and the customer than they think they do right now. Engineering is not like just there to talk to product marketing. They have thoughts and opinions on how customers use their product because they do extensive user testing. They build for a customer. They build to solve a problem. And engineers and product managers can storytell better than marketers sometimes. So like they're not just there to build something that you market, but like they're there to give you ideas and to learn from. Like product managers are better storytellers than marketers sometimes. I don't want to make broad sweeping statements, but yeah, like
That's a good one.
engineering and product managers are your friends.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Final question. What is one thing outside of business and marketing that you do that when you come back to business and marketing, you just do it better? It's outside, could be inside, but it's something not in business marketing that you do that helps you do business marketing better.
I think resting your brain helps you come back better, and how you rest your brain kind of is like getting into flow states. This is like such a bro-y conversation, I feel like sometimes, but for me, I got really into boxing like 5 years ago, and like exercise in general is the only time where I'm not thinking. I'm like wholeheartedly like lights are off, nobody's home, I have zero thoughts when I am exercising, and that's usually when like you'll get an aha moment, or you'll be like, oh, like that makes sense, or like I just had an entire argument in my head and like resolved it by the end of this. And I think like showing up better for work means that you stop thinking about work sometimes, because that's not your whole life, and it's okay if you like it, but don't make it your whole thing, because then you're gonna hate it. You're like, you can't keep doing just one thing, especially I am like a hyperactive brain. Like I can't think about one thing for the rest of my life. So yeah, if anyone wants a new activity to try, 10 out of 10 would recommend boxing. You feel really strong.
Yeah, I was gonna say, does boxing help you at all, you think, with like self-defense? Like if someone ran up on you, like do you feel you have a greater chance to like defend yourself or?
Yeah, I seeing like new people come into our class who like come into a class who have never boxed before, male or female. A lot of people can't punch or defend.
Yeah.
So
So
that's cool.
yeah, so lesson is don't run up on Sarah when you see her in public because
Don't do
she's
it.
got five
I
years
wear a
of
lot of
experience.
rings too,
Okay.
so that'll hurt.
Definitely, yeah, leave some imprints. I like that. This last section, I just like to open if you want to plug anything. Obviously, we talked about your podcast, but if there's anything else you want to let the 2 to 3 people listening kind of know about, here's your opportunity.
Yeah, self-control and cheese. We came up with the title like on a whim and haven't really changed it, but it's not really what we're all about. But feel free to check it out anyway. It's just like I don't know. There are some really smart people out there, and you can get a lot of ideas even if you don't read business books. 10 out of 10 would recommend reading fiction to also turn your brain off. Fiction rocks. If you want any book suggestions, I also read like a book every like week and a half, but it's usually fiction.
That's awesome. That's awesome. We'll reach out to Sarah if you want a book recommendation and check her
yeah.
out on the Juice because she's on the Juice. I
Oh
saw
yes,
you
I
on
didn't
the
even
Juice.
plug that.
Yeah, so if
Thank
you want
you.
to follow her to the promised land, do that on the Juice. But also you can find her on LinkedIn. It'll all be in the show notes. So yes, thank you, Sarah, for coming on. I appreciate it, and this was a wonderful conversation.
Thanks so much for having me. This was great.
This is the end of the podcast.